My name is Bob Thompson. I'm a 25-year-old working at a small to medium-sized firm. Every day it's just back and forth between home and the office, but I always make it a point to stop by a certain place. It's a park near the subway station, and there's always someone sitting on a bench there. "Good evening." "Huck, you are here again." The reply came from a young woman. But with her long blonde hair, she looked like a typical rebel at first glance. Well, she really is a rebel, apparently the leader of some female gang. Why I am talking to her in the park, let's go back a few months. One day, I decided to take a shortcut through that park. It was dark, thought it was deserted, but there she was, Catherine, sitting on the bench. She had what looked like a bruise from a fight on her cheek. Concerned, I blurted out, "Are you okay?" But she snapped, "Mind your own business," and ran off. That was our first encounter. To be honest, it was pretty awful, but for some reason, I couldn't get Catherine out of my mind. It struck me because she reminded me so much of my younger self. Not that I was a rebel, but I had my wild days too. When my parents divorced, I was placed in an orphanage and grew up there for the rest of my childhood. No one ever visited, and I didn't get along with the other kids. Maybe it was childish pride, but I believed asking for help was admitting defeat and showing tears was for the weak. That mindset didn't change even after I left the facility at 18 and got my current job. Entering the working world without a clue and too proud to ask for advice. Whenever I messed up, I just apologize and try to fix things on my own, usually making things worse. The president, seeing all this, became concerned. The company I work for isn't big, so everyone's pretty close, including the president. When he invited me out for a drink, I thought for sure I was in for a lecture. But the president praised me, saying I was working really hard. "If you don't know something, just ask those around you. If you need help, just ask for it. Relying on someone doesn't mean you're weak," he told me. He really understood how I felt. Relying on someone isn't a sign of weakness. I totally agreed with him, but at that time, it hit me like a bolt out of the blue. His words truly saved me. From then on, I stopped bottling up everything, and my mistakes significantly decreased. Catherine, she really reminded me of myself back then. So, I began visiting the park often, looking for her. I just wanted to talk with her for my own satisfaction. She frequented the park, and nearly 10 times, I'd approach her and she'd run away. Every time I saw her, she had some kind of injury, so I started carrying band-aids, hoping to give her one someday. On our 11th encounter, maybe she gave up or something, but she finally said, "You're so persistent," and we started talking. At this point, I was pretty stubborn myself, and my initial goal had shifted. I just wanted a proper introduction. So, when I got the chance to talk to her, I started with my story. I told her I was worried about her injuries and that it was unsafe for her to be alone. She responded with a scowl, "You're not my dad, are you?" But she gratefully accepted the band-aid I offered. I could tell that despite her tough exterior, deep down, she was a sincere person. Maybe it was because I gave her a band-aid, or she just wanted more, but she began coming to the park daily. We chatted for about 10 minutes, and I learned that her name was Catherine. She was 20, the leader of a girls' gang, and she'd get into fights with her crew daily. One of the crew members, she's got quite the fiery temper, and she's like, "The card boss is too soft, so I'm gonna set things straight." And she started a fight with me. When I fought back hard, next thing I know, none of my crew was on my side anymore. She said, looking down sadly. I took over as the leader of the group, trying to work for everyone's good, but seems like folks aren't too happy with the way I do things. I might get kicked out soon. At that moment, her face looked so young and full of worry. I've never been involved with gang stuff, but I do know the loneliness of being isolated in a group. but I also knew that giving advice might just earn me a "who do you think you're, my parent?" All I can say is, being in charge is tough, was all I could muster in her support. So, one day, after this routine of meeting up at the park and talking for about 10 minutes had been going on for a while, a significant incident that would change our relationship occurred. As always, I went to the park, carrying some band-aids. But when I got there, Catherine was curled up, sitting on the bench with her legs pulled up, face buried in her arms. I rushed to her side. "Catherine, what happened?" I exclaimed. When she looked up, tears were streaming down her face. Oh, Bob." The moment she saw my face, she hugged me tightly. I was taken aback, but tried to comfort her by patting her back. After a while, her crying slowed down, punctuated by occasional hiccups. On closer look, her cheek was swollen, and her injuries seemed worse than usual. Seeing my concern, she started to cry again. I lost a fight. They kicked me out. Turns out, she finally lost to that fiery member and was dethroned as the gang's boss. Over time, it seems the majority had sided with this new leader, and no one was there to support Catherine. "I don't want to be alone. I'm scared." She looked genuinely terrified. Seeing her like this, I couldn't help but blurt out, "I'm here for you. It'll be all right." It might have been a reckless thing to say, but I couldn't think of anything else to calm her down. After that, I just listened to her quietly. She talked about how she tried her best but still faced backlash from her crew, and wondered what she could have done differently. I didn't have the answers, but I guess just talking helped her calm down. Eventually, she stopped crying altogether. "Sorry, Bob. I showed you a pathetic side of me." Just because you cried or rallied on someone doesn't mean you're weak, Catherine. So, don't make that face. When I said that, Catherine's eyes widened in surprise. I realized it was the same reaction I had once. Probably, the president must have felt this way when he comforted me back then. Given that we spoke longer than usual, it was already late. She seemed calm, but it was getting late, so I thought I should probably drive her home. Checking the time, I realized, oh no, I missed the last train. Apparently, we get so engrossed in our conversation that the last train had left. Tomorrow's an off day from work, so after dropping her off, I thought of staying over somewhere, but then Catherine dropped a bombshell. "Why don't you come over to my place?" Even if she's 20, I thought it was a bit much to go inside her house. However, Catherine said, "If you're dropping me off, it's fine, right? You won't do anything weird, will you?" I assured her I had no intentions. The more I would have denied it, the guiltier I might have seemed, so I gratefully accepted her offer. She lived in a small apartment. Apparently, she used to live with her dad, but they don't get along anymore, so she lives alone now. "Thanks for having me." "Sure, come on in." And like that, I ended up in her room, which was quite unexpected in many ways. There were frilly cushions, pink curtains, and loads of cute stuffed animals. The whole room had a very lovely feel to it. "You have a cute room." Isn't everyone's room like this?" Seeing my surprised expression, Catherine too seemed taken aback. It seemed she thought her room was pretty standard. "I guess most are, but yours is on the cuter side." It wasn't meant in a bad way, but she seemed to have a reaction to the word cute and said, "Cute? I thought this was normal. Give me a break. This is my first time having someone over." Her face turned beet red with embarrassment. Seeing her like that made me wonder if maybe her regular clothes and underwear were on the cute side too, and my suspicions were confirmed. A quick glance revealed laundry with cute frilly underwear hanging out to dry. She noticed too and hastily shut the curtains. "You weren't supposed to see that." "Hey, that wasn't on purpose." With her face turning bright red, Catherine began playfully smacking me, and I had no defense. The next day, turns out, we ended up sleeping until noon. That's because, after our previous chat, Catherine suddenly wanted to watch a horse show she had come across. She was screaming out of fear, and we both were laughing and joking around. Turns out, she wanted to watch horse shows but was too scared to watch them alone. A shocking revelation. In fact, her DVR was full of unwatched horse shows she had recorded. Just one more, please. Just one more, okay. Last one, I promise. Like this, we ended up binge-watching almost 10 of the horror shows she had recorded. Even when I suggested we call it a night, Catherine was insatiable, and we continued until dawn. It's been a while since I had this much fun with someone, maybe since I left my folks' house. Waking up in the afternoon, Catherine said that with a somber tone. Feeling for her, I suggested, why not go back home for a visit? From what I heard, aside from being work-focused and often neglecting Catherine, her dad was a pretty regular guy. Catherine looked down, saying, if I go back now, he'll probably just tell me to leave. Look, I might not get the whole parent-child dilemma because I don't have parents, but maybe you should try talking to him. If he tells you to leave, then maybe it's time to really move on. But if you don't talk, you won't even give other possibilities a chance. As I was leaving, I added, you are not my family, so stop preaching me. Catherine replied with a smile as she waved goodbye. She had a look of relief on her face, and that put my mind at ease. A few days later, after work, I decided to visit the park again. However, she was nowhere to be found. But under the usual bench where she sat, there was a note, going to talk with my dad, might not be able to come here for a while. When things settle down, I'll be back. Thanks, Bob. Honestly, it wasn't safe for a young woman to be sitting in a park at night anyway, so it was probably for the best. If she can reconcile with her family, then that's great. I thought that, but I still felt a bit lonely. A month later. That day was hectic at work. Someone made an entry error, and we received a massive amount of supplies. I was being blamed for the mistake by my boss. Yes, I placed an order a set of supplies that arrived at the same time, but the bulk shipment was not my order. Yet my boss insisted, it must have been you. You're the one who always messes up and troubles everyone around here. It's true that I caused some trouble when I first joined the company, so I couldn't blame him for suspecting me. But he was clearly jumping to conclusions. No matter how much I defended myself, no one believed me. I even started thinking, maybe I should just admit to it. The issue with the order was already confirmed to be a clerical error, right? Suddenly, I heard someone's voice. I looked up to see a beautiful woman I didn't recognize. But the voice, I knew that voice. Are you, Catherine? Hey there, Bob. Long time no see. She had dyed her hair black, but it was definitely Catherine. Why was Catherine at my office? Then it clicked. A week ago, the president had mentioned his daughter would be joining as a secretary. She was still in training and was to be introduced formally later, but I never imagined that secretary was Catherine. I think it's not right to jump to conclusions just because you're suspicious. Besides, even if Bob, he maybe made a typo, you're the one who does the final check, right? I think it's unfair to only blame Bob. Sorry about that, Bob. I jumped the gun there. When confronted by Catherine, the boss broke into a cold sweat and said, right, I had a business call to make, and hurriedly left. Thanks, Catherine. You really saved me there. No big deal. Anything for Bob. Hey, Catherine, don't just drop the formalities with your coworkers. That's when the president made an appearance. He explained the situation again, and it turned out Catherine was his daughter. My advice had apparently been the catalyst for them starting to mend their father-daughter relationship. Catherine's sudden departure had shocked him, but after she opened up about her feelings, it seems he was able to genuinely engage with her. Thank you, Bob. Thanks to you, I can spend time with my daughter again. I'm embarrassed to admit, but I haven't been much of a father to her. That's why I saw her in you." I realized what he meant. The words the president told me were meant for his daughter as well. Those words, in a roundabout way, reached Catherine through me. "Thanks, Bob. Because of you, I'm not alone anymore. How many times have I told you not to drop the formalities at work? He is also your mentor here." Chiding Catherine, the president turned to me. "Being a mentor is quite a responsibility. I'd like Catherine to take over the company someday. After she finishes her training as my assistant, I want her to work on the floor for 6 months. I'd like you to be her mentor, Bob. Can I count on you?" Me. I wondered if I was up to the task, but the president believes that teaching others is a form of learning. And since Catherine was saying things like, "I'm counting on you, Bob," I couldn't refuse. "All right then. Looking forward to working with you, Catherine." I started hanging out with Catherine like this, but since we personally got along so well, we began going out for drinks together too. Before we knew it, we were dating and eventually got married amidst the blessings of everyone. Having become her husband, I genuinely thought I should support Catherine, who was set to become the CEO. But then, Catherine dropped a bombshell saying, "Bob should become the CEO. I'm more suited to be a secretary." Suddenly, I was the candidate for the CEO, getting all the know-how drilled into me by the current president, or should I say, my father-in-law. Honestly, it's exhausting every day, but if I can repay the man who changed my life, it's a small price to pay. The president, or rather my father-in-law, always tells me with a big smile, "I'm so glad you became my son-in-law," and he guides me rigorously. Time flies, and before I realized, 5 years had passed. Even looking back, these 5 years flew by incredibly fast. I fully embraced the role of CEO, and while I've gotten used to the work now, things are still hectic. And here's why. "Hey, James, wait for me." "Nope. Playtime." James sure loves to run around. You see, shortly after we got married, Catherine became pregnant. Now we're chasing after our lively 4-year-old son. Raising a kid sure is tough. I always admired those teachers and childcare centers who could handle several kids at once. I'm struggling with just my own son. Next time, I'm racing against Daddy. "Hold on, just a moment. Come on, Daddy, you can do it." Catherine cheers me on as I'm panting hard. Over the past 5 years, Catherine has truly become a stunning woman. Her makeup has matured, and she's known as the beautiful mom at the daycare. Now, Catherine is expecting our second child. So, in her stead, I'm going all out entertaining our son. "All right, break's over. Let's race, kiddo." "Yay, all right. I'm so happy right now." My adorable son and my beloved Catherine. And our unborn child, whom I've yet to meet. For these three, I'd do anything. Once feeling so alone in the world, my family now is everything to me. I'm determined to make them the happiest they can be. That's the goal I've set for myself in life. But first, I've got to be a playmate for the little guy right in front of me. Waving to my son, I run around the park's grassy field with him. "Do you think someone with only a high school diploma like you can find another job?" Miss Anderson said that, looking down on me. I calmly stated the facts. "About that, actually, I'm about to become the head manager at your workplace." "What? What do you mean?" Miss Anderson was shocked, but this was undeniably true. My aspiration to work in department stores stems from my experiences during my childhood. I was very close to my grandfather and was heavily influenced by him, as he was a department store manager himself. My name is Cody Green. I'm a 24-year-old working professional. By the way, I'm single and don't have a girlfriend. Currently, I work at a large department store. I started working there right after high school, so this is my 6th year in the workforce. When I tell people I work in a department store, some sees as an easy job, but it's not. Working in a department store actually requires a lot of skills. This could be said for most service industries, but dealing with difficult customers and unreasonable complaints is a daily occurrence. The more customers that visit, the more likely it is that problems will arise. To always provide excellent customer service, it's essential to continuously improve product knowledge and conversation skills. It's our duty to keep learning so that our customers can have a pleasant shopping experience. It's not just about selling products and being done with it. Above all, department store employees must always present themselves well, behave gracefully, and be the kind of people suitable for the store. Being a department store worker, which might seem glamorous at a glance, is actually quite challenging. There were times when I felt like giving up, but during those times, I would always think of my late grandfather. My grandfather passed away when I entered elementary school, but until then, he had always managed a department store inherited from his father in our local town. The department store my grandfather owned was not very large, perhaps because it was a family business. However, with the expertise he'd accumulated over the years, it was always bustling and beloved by the locals. With its glitzy displays and the constant stream of people, the department store always felt like a vibrant festival. Watching the delighted customers shopping would always make my young heart leap with joy. I loved the special atmosphere of the store, filled with my grandfather's touches. Whenever I had the chance, I used to visit the department store. My grandfather, always in a sharp suit and efficiently managing his tasks, radiated a youthful energy despite his age. Even though he was the owner, he never acted arrogant. He always humbly went to the sales floor himself and took the lead in handling challenging tasks. Seeing his dedication, the other employees had a strong trust in him. The positive atmosphere in the department store was largely due to my grandfather's character. Things were usually peaceful, but one day, an incident occurred. A customer came forward, mentioning there was a shabbily dressed mother and child in the food court. Immediately, my grandfather and I headed to the food court on the first floor. There, a mother and child dressed in ragged clothes sat at a table, with complimentary drink in front of them. The pair consisted of a mother, who looked to be in her 30s, and a young son about the same age as me at that time. Even from a distance, it was clear that they were both exhausted. The other customers around were also a little rustled, with uneasy expressions. The mother must have sensed this too. She was looking down and blushing with embarrassment. One of the ladies whispered to my grandfather, "Could you please ask them to leave?" Upon hearing this, my grandfather slowly approached the two. Seeing him approach, the mother and son looked scared, probably thinking they'd be reprimanded for not ordering any food. But my grandfather, with a gentle voice meant to ease their tension, said to them, "I'm so sorry for the wait. You're here for the interview, right? The interview room is right this way. Please follow me." "Huh?" My grandfather said this, causing the mother to widen her eyes in surprise. Of course, it was the first time my grandfather met her, and there was no real interview scheduled. But he acted quickly to ensure the two of them wouldn't attract any more attention from curious onlookers. Leading them with a professional air, he guided them to the reception room, saying, "Right this way." Once in the reception room, he offered the mother and child drinks and a variety of snacks. Upon asking the mother her name, it was revealed that she was named Karen. And apparently, her son, named Taylor, was around my age. Taylor seemed quite hungry, his eyes shining at the sight of the snacks. Karen apologized profusely to my grandfather. "I'm so sorry for coming to the department store looking like this. We've startled other customers and caused a nuisance." Despite her disheveled appearance, Karen's demeanor and way of speaking were surprisingly refined. Both my grandfather and I were taken aback. Taylor also began to eat the snacks neatly after saying thank you. This parent and child seemed to have proper manners and social skills. It's no trouble at all, but if you don't mind sharing, is there something difficult going on? Well, my husband was abusive, and I managed to escape with my child. Daddy was really scary. That sounds tough, I said to Taylor, feeling sympathetic even at his young age. At first, we stayed in hotels to avoid sleeping outside, but we ran out of money, and that's why we were in the food court. I'm truly sorry. There's no need to apologize so much. We've had folks like you come into this department store before. In fact, I have some pamphlets from social services. Would you like some information? Seeing this, my grandfather handed her a brochure. Karen thanked my grandfather multiple times. Thank you. I never knew there were shelters for women suffering from domestic violence. I think we'll seek help from them first. As Karen prepared to leave with Taylor, then my grandfather said, "Thank you so much for coming. And by the way, Karen, you passed the test." "Huh? What are you talking about?" My grandfather, with a smile, explained. "I'm talking about a job interview. If you're willing, I'd like to formally hire you as a full-time employee here." Me, a full-time employee? Yes. In speaking with you, I see that you have a good interpersonal skill set. This department store also provides you with a uniform and a daycare service for your children. We would very much like to work with you. Tears filled Karen's eyes at my grandfather's words. She kept saying, "Thank you," with a voice thick with emotion. Even now, 20 years later, that moment remains vivid in my mind. I aspired to be just like my grandfather, a man full of integrity and justice, in that moment. Good morning. From that day on, Karen began working as a full-time employee at the department store. Though she looked worn out when we first met, once she applied some makeup and wore the store uniform, she looked entirely different. Karen turned out to be a stunningly beautiful woman. Her polished demeanor meant she quickly fit into her new role. Customers praised her for her pleasant customer service. With a stable salary, Karen's life began to stabilize. While she worked, Taylor spent his time in the daycare. I often played with him there. "Hey, Taylor, I'm sorry it's just hand-me-downs, but I'm giving you some clothes." Saying that, I gave my clothes to Taylor. I knew Taylor's family was still struggling financially, so I wanted to help out. My mom had suggested it. In reality, not only were there hand-me-downs, but also brand new clothes, but I kept that a secret from Taylor and his family. "Thanks a lot. My mom was saying we don't have many clothes, so this helps a lot." Taylor thanked me with a smile on his face. Just as his mother, Karen, was strikingly beautiful, Taylor too had a well-structured face and was quite handsome. I always enjoyed spending time with Taylor and wished every day could be like that. Unfortunately, that daily routine ended as soon as I started elementary school. 3 days after my elementary school entrance ceremony, my grandfather passed away. It was such a sudden departure that the whole department store was caught off guard. Initially, my dad took over the department store, but then a new problem arose. A nationwide chain shopping mall had opened nearby, and the customers started flocking there. The timing was bad because our store was in the middle of a management transition, which probably contributed to the problem. In the end, our struggling department store was merged into the large mall. It's all because I wasn't good enough. I've really let everyone down. My father was deeply saddened by the whole situation. But sometimes it's just bad luck. My mom and the other employees didn't solely blame my father for everything. It's sad that the memories of the department store with my grandfather are gone, but sometimes you just have to accept fate. I tried to move on from the loss of Karen and Taylor by constantly reminding myself of that. Thanks to my father's connections, Karen got a full-time job at a department store in a neighboring state. Karen came to say her thanks when she was leaving. "I can't thank you enough for all the help and for introducing me to my new job." "No problem at all. You've contributed a lot to the department store. Wishing you the best in your new venture." I wanted to say goodbye to Taylor as well, but unfortunately, he wasn't there. Taylor, being only 7 years old at that time, seemed unable to accept the situation. The loss of the department store, filled with memories of fun times at the daycare, seemed to have taken a toll on him. I wondered how Taylor is doing now. Even in high school, I often thought of him. Currently, both my parents work at different department stores. Unlike the time when my grandfather had a thriving business, our financial situation isn't as comfortable as before. But we're a close-knit family, and we're content with our lives. I'm sure my grandfather in heaven would want nothing more than to see us happy. Now in my junior year of high school, I've been appointed as the vice president of the student council, so I'm more motivated than ever to attend school. My friend Mike said, "Hey, Cody, you're working with Miss Anderson in the student council, right? Can you introduce me to her?" Hearing the surname Anderson, I got nervous. "There's no way I can introduce you to President Anderson. She might look cute, but she's really strong-willed." In our student council, Ms. Anderson, a female student, was the president. Apparently, her father runs a law firm, so she's kind of an heiress. Our school allows casual clothing, so Ms. Anderson always dresses stylishly. Because of her beauty, she seems to pull off any outfit. Just admit it, Cody, you're just trying to get close to Ms. Anderson, aren't you? No way. Even if I tried, Ms. Anderson doesn't seem to like me at all. Indeed. Ms. Anderson has always been tough on me. One day when we were alone in the council room, I tried to strike up a conversation. I rarely talk to girls, so I'm not sure what to say. "Oh, I've got it. You have a great sense of fashion, don't you? Huh? You are always so stylish, and the other girls think you're fantastic. Are you saying I try too hard?" "No, I didn't mean it like that." With anger evident on her beautiful face, Ms. Anderson shot me a sharp glare. "Whatever I choose to wear, it's none of your business." With that, Ms. Anderson swiftly turned away and went back to her work. It's tough when you try to give a compliment, and it gets misconstrued like that. I didn't know how to respond. I just felt out of place and continued working in silence. With that, Ms. Anderson swiftly turned away and went back to her work. It's tough when you try to give a compliment, and it gets misconstrued like that. I didn't know how to respond. There were times she just stared at me silently, and when I asked, "Is something wrong?" she quickly responded with, "Nothing at all," and averted her gaze. When she saw me talking to other girls, she promptly chimed in, "Stop chatting and focus on your work." When I shared the story about Miss Anderson with Mike, he said, "Well, Miss Anderson was chosen as the student council president, and she's pretty popular among both boys and girls. I don't think she's a bad person." That's true. Many students indeed described Miss Anderson as a very kind girl. She was excellent in her role in the student council and always got high grades. She was the most popular at school, partly because of her beauty. I wished I could have gotten closer to Ms. Anderson, but unfortunately, in the year we spent together on the student council, the distance between us never seemed to close. When discussing our future plans in high school, I told my teacher I planned to work at a department store. Given my grades, the teacher suggested college, but due to financial constraints, I stuck to my decision. Because my high school was a preparatory school, I was the only student among my classmates who had graduated from high school and entered the workforce. I had this vague feeling that I probably wouldn't see my high school buddies again after this. Yep. Including Ms. Anderson. Let's take a graduation photo together. On graduation day, a lot of girls gathered around Ms. Anderson, and they all took a commemorative photo together. It was the first time I saw Ms. Anderson, who usually appeared reserved, laughing so openly and cheerfully. For some reason, my heart raced. While I often said I wasn't comfortable around Ms. Anderson, I might have had a soft spot for her. I'm not saying I wanted to date her, but I do wish we could have had better conversations. With that thought, I left the school building. 6 years after graduation, just when the sweet and bitter memories of youth were fading, I received an invitation for a reunion. The invite was for our entire grade to have a reunion at a fancy hotel. Looking at the invitation, I was surprised to see that Ms. Anderson was one of the organizers. Considering she was a beauty and came from a well-to-do family, I thought she must have gotten married by now, but her last name hasn't changed, and it seems she's still single. It's not like I'm going for Ms. Anderson, but I decided to attend the reunion anyway. And then came the day of the reunion. Heading to the hotel, there were far more attendees than I expected. Upon entering, I received a sheet listing all the participants from one of the organizers. The sheet had sections for current status, a message to your high school self, current occupation, and we could learn about everyone's recent life. Come to think of it, this questionnaire was in the invitation. I heard that it was Ms. Anderson's idea to have this survey and to distribute these sheets on the day. I was impressed by her ingenuity. Today, Ms. Anderson was naturally the center of attention, surrounded by many of our classmates and chatting happily. She looked even more stunning than before, elegantly dressed. "Wow, you work at that prestigious department store." "Oh, it's not a big deal," she replied with a smile when asked about her current job, but in reality, getting a permanent position at that renowned department store is quite selective. Given its long-standing reputation, one needs to have decent academic achievements and communication skills, and looks and demeanor suitable for the store's ambience are also important. Considering Miss Anderson graduated from an elite college and her appearance and manners exude elegance, she probably was deemed fit for the store and was offered the position. While I was enjoying conversations with old classmates, I occasionally stole glances at Miss Anderson without her noticing. Though we were both in the student council, I hesitated to approach her. I figured she probably didn't want to mingle with someone like me. But to my surprise, Miss Anderson approached me. I was taken aback, but she said with a straight face, "Cody, long time no see. You left the current occupation section on the questionnaire blank. Are you currently unemployed?" I hadn't expected that topic and replied a bit sheepishly, "Well, sorry, I'm changing jobs soon, so I left it blank intentionally." "Do you think you, with just a high school diploma, can find another job?" Miss Anderson remarked with a hint of condescension. I calmly responded with the facts. "Actually, I'm about to become a manager at your department store." What do you mean?" she asked in shock. That was the undeniable truth. I was about to leave my current job to become a manager at the same prestigious store where Ms. Anderson works. Thanks to decent performance at my current job, and also leveraging connections from my late grandfather, the store owner offered me a position. "So, you mean, you'll be my boss?" she asked incredulously. "Yeah, that's the gist of it." "You're kidding." I was on guard, thinking that she might say something, but with a stunned look, she was quite subdued for the rest of the reunion. I was puzzled by her attitude, but later, I was officially appointed as a manager at the well-established department store and started working. Being a manager was tough at times, but it was more fulfilling, and I was blessed with competent and reliable subordinates. I enjoyed working in a privileged environment, but Ms. Anderson always seemed distant and intimidating towards me. "Cody, I don't understand this part." In contrast to Ms. Anderson, a new female employee named Lily was actively speaking to me. She also had a different charm from Ms. Anderson, and she was a very cute and glamorous woman. In addition, she had a friendly personality, and many male employees admired Lily. I thought she was a friendly and wonderful woman, but for some reason, I didn't feel any romantic feelings for her. "Oh, you can do it like this." Still, I was glad to have such active communication. I believed that proper collaboration would make the atmosphere in the company even better. But for some reason, whenever I was talking to Lily, Ms. Anderson jumped in right away. "Hey, Lily, if you don't understand something, ask me or others." Yikes, Ms. Anderson. What's with the yikes? Manager has more important work to do. Come to think of it, this kind of thing happened in high school too. When I talked to another girl while working for the student council, Ms. Anderson would say work. I wonder if I look like I'm slacking off in her eyes. I gently quieted her. "Ms. Anderson, well, I think I need to understand what pots the new employees find difficult to understand as a manager, so if I'm really busy, I'll ask another employee, so you don't have to worry about me that much." I intended to convey it in a gentle tone, but she didn't seem to like it. "You're being all sweet to female employees. That's sexual harassment." She left after saying that. What's with her attitude? I feel the same way as Lily did. I wondered why Ms. Anderson, who is usually such a competent woman, becomes emotional about me. I wondered if, just like in high school, I will continue to spend all my time like this without ever being able to understand her. I was worried about Ms. Anderson, but one day there was a drinking party at my company. The first party was held in a serious atmosphere, but as it went to the second and third parties, members were divided by department, and before I knew it, I was having a third party with members of my department. "Cody, please drink more." "Oh, I'm good." Lily and almost everyone else was drunk, and they drank a lot and were completely drunk. But only Ms. Anderson didn't talk to anyone and was quietly drinking by herself. I was worried about her as a manager, and I couldn't enjoy drinking as I wanted to. I wonder why I'm so concerned about her. "Let's stay together tonight." "Lily, you're a little too drunk." With the help of alcohol, Lily approached me more aggressively than usual. I was wondering how to deal with it when suddenly Ms. Anderson started crying. Sob, sob. "Ms. Anderson, are you okay?" What is it?" The other members, including Lily, didn't seem to notice that Ms. Anderson was crying because they were drunk. I wanted to discreetly get her out of there without anyone noticing. I told her, "Ms. Anderson, you don't seem to be feeling well. I'll drive you to the station," and I left the party right then. Everyone was already drunk, so when the two of us disappeared, nobody seemed to notice or care. I first took Ms. Anderson to a nearby park. I figured if we sat on a bench there, she might calm down for a moment. After handing her a bottle of water I bought, she took a sip and appeared a bit calmer. "Ms. Anderson, what's wrong? Did something happen?" As I asked this, she looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. I thought Lily would take you, Cody, from me, and it made me so sad." What? The fact that Ms. Anderson referred to me as Cody was so shocking. My mind went blank for a moment, and her revelation only added to my confusion. "Ms. Anderson, are you drunk?" "Yeah, if I wasn't drunk, I wouldn't be able to express my feelings this way." Oh, the good old days, back when all we did was innocently play together. I had no idea what she was talking about. "You mean back in high school?" "No, when we were much younger, when you and I were in preschool." It then hit me. I realized Ms. Anderson's first name was Taylor. I had always addressed her by her last name, but she was actually Taylor. But I remembered playing with a boy. Wait, but your surname was different, and besides, wasn't Taylor a boy's name back then? Back then we were Sopo. I had a short haircut and mostly wore hand-me-downs, so everyone thought I was a boy. I wanted to tell everyone I was a girl, especially after Cody gave me his old boy clothes, but it became even harder. Also, my mom remarried, so my surname changed. I couldn't believe it. The popular girl in school, Ms. Anderson, was that Taylor. I was dumbfounded for a moment. Now that I think of it, Ms. Anderson does resemble Taylor's mom. To think that Taylor had grown up to be such a beautiful and mature woman was all too shocking. Tears rolling down her face, she continued. Remember, I never said goodbye to you in the end when we were little. I understand now, as an adult, how heartbroken I was when our favorite department store closed down. I somewhat resented you and your parents. Ms. Anderson, I know it couldn't be helped, but in high school, I hated how I treated you so coldly. I wanted to come forward and say it's me, Taylor, but I didn't want you to see my weak side from back then. So, I dressed up and focused on my appearance. Now that we work together again, I still can't be honest with my feelings. It's pathetic, and that's why I broke down. I'm truly sorry. Taylor. For the first time in ages, I called her by that name. She looked surprised for a moment. I missed the department store owned by my grandpa too, but our friendship is forever, and the memories will always be with us. Nothing has changed between us. We can always start anew. Cody. Taylor called out my name and clung to me. As I embraced her, I realized just how much she'd struggled and suffered from her insecurities. That's why I wanted to cherish her, scars and all. I guess I was drawn to her because she was Taylor. From that day, we started dating and also built a great working relationship. I want to become a wonderful department store manager, just like your grandpa. Seeing Taylor say that with a smile, she truly shined. It must have been my grandpa's kindness that brought us back together. A girlfriend who accepts me as who I am. I've come to love her even more. I strongly promised myself to make her happy, no matter what. My name's Jake, 28 years old. Born to kind-hearted parents, I had an average school life, and now I'm a regular office worker. The company I work for has a wonderful working condition. They pay for overtime work, give regular breaks, and have solid benefits. You might think I have no worries, but even I have some issues. It's about my body shape. I have a naturally large frame. Overweight. Well, actually, I'm also tall and have a big build, so I'm more like a cuddly bear. Being big isn't a problem. The issue is the gap between my appearance and my personality. Embarrassingly, I'm timid. I get scared easily and can be jumpy. Absolutely no horror movies or roller coasters for me. And while people think I must love meat and eat a lot, beef doesn't sit well with me. I like rice just as much as average guy. Sweets, like cake and chocolate, are my favorite. I can't even drink black coffee. In our modern day, people say we all have different values, but people judge based on appearance anyway. My ex once dumped me, saying she thought I'd be more manly. That was back in college. I was never good with women, and being dumped like that left a huge scar. I ended up growing distant from women. As a result, I'm still single at 28. I've been set up on dates by coworkers and friends quite a few times. But conversations never really took off, and nothing progressed. I hadn't found a woman I truly felt connected with since college, so I thought I was okay with that. But now, there's a woman I've been interested in. At my workplace, I was assigned to a newly established department 6 months ago. The department, made up of relatively younger folks within the company, was still small and had yet to make any achievements. But everyone is full of enthusiasm to make results and expand this new department, and I feel very fulfilled doing my part. The woman I have a crush on is Jessica, who became the boss in this new department. Despite being 34, she was given a significant role in this new setup, a real successful career-driven woman. Not only is she competent at her job, but she's also gorgeous, with an outstanding figure. She's even been featured in the company newsletter, making her a bit of a celebrity around the office. But what makes her truly wonderful isn't her looks or skills, but her social and friendly personality. In a department dominated by men, Jessica always communicates proactively, which is improving the office teamworks. For some reason, she seems to pay special attention to me. "Jake, I've got a snack for you again today. Here you go." She always gives me snacks. I often get invited to lunch too. Strangely, Jessica seems to only invite me to lunch. "Hey, are you, by any chance, dating Jessica?" I've been asked this by my colleagues more times than I can count. Once, I asked her, "Why do you always invite me for lunch? I'm not the best at making conversation, and wouldn't you have more fun with others?" "Oh, are you feeling pressured? It's hard to decline an invite from a boss, right? I'm so sorry," she quickly said, and I hastily denied. "No, that's not it. I mean, I'm grateful, but I always wonder why you care about someone like me. I'm not particularly skilled at work, and there are great-looking seniors and peers around, so I wonder why you always reach out to me." Hearing my lack of confidence, Jessica softly smiled and replied, "It's not just about who gets the best results at work. We're a team, Jake. You are always there supporting everyone. That's why I and everyone else feel comfortable working with you. I know other good things about you. Be confident." Honestly, hearing that from someone I had feelings for made me incredibly happy. But I didn't have any intentions of confessing my feelings to Jessica. To me, she seemed like someone who was out of my league. Maybe she cares about me because the needy ones are the cutest, or something like that. Just being around her, seeing her, and talking to her was enough to satisfy me. That's what I thought. However, soon there was an event that changed my perspective. One time, I had to go on a business trip out of state with Jessica. The overnight trip, which we were taking by train, was initially planned for Jessica and another senior colleague. But the day before, that colleague fell sick. There was talk of Jessica going alone, but last minute, they decided to let me accompany her for experience. Being my first business trip in the new department, and especially with Jessica, I was pretty nervous. Perhaps noticing my anxiety, Jessica tried to ease my tension by striking up a conversation on the train, and even gave me some time to relax when I looked tired. I was reminded again how considerate and kind she is. That day, I planned to stay in a hotel, while Jessica was planning to stay at her parents' house. Turns out the business location was near Jessica's hometown, so she had taken off from work the next day. By the way, anticipating the fatigue from the trip, I had also been granted leave for the following day. So, our plan was to head back leisurely on an afternoon train. However, after finishing our work, something unexpected happened. While walking close to my hotel, Jessica suddenly sat down. Apparently, she suffers from anemia sometimes. As she sat, she looked pale and said she felt dizzy. I thought of taking her to a hospital, but after she took her meds, Jessica assured me I'll be okay soon, and insisted we didn't need to go. "I'll take a taxi to my parents' house from here, Jake. You can head back to the hotel. It's okay," she said, but I was too worried to let her go alone. I got into the taxi with her, deciding to drop her off at her parents' house. I was supposed to head back right after that, or at least that was the plan. But the moment we arrived at Jessica's parents' house, everything changed. I held Jessica's bags and supported her as we stood at the front door of her family's home. When I rang the doorbell of the two-story American-style house, two younger men, who looked strikingly similar to each other, came out. Both of them shouted in unison, "Mom, Jessica brought a guy home." Before I could even react, I heard the hustle and bustle from inside, and several people, both men and women, rushed out. "Oh my, Jessica, when did you get a boyfriend? Why didn't you tell us? We're not prepared at all. Sister-in-law's boyfriend is a big guy, huh?" While I was in shock, Jessica, having a headache, whispered, "No, he's not." She tried to explain, But then 3 kids, Jack, Leo, and Sam, came running to the door. "Auntie, you're so late. Let's play. Come on. Draw something for us. Draw." Clearly, the kids weren't interested in our story. Feeling overwhelmed by everyone talking at once, an older man, about my size, came from the back and let out a sigh. "Everyone, please calm down. At least let them in." With this atmosphere, I couldn't say, "I'll just head out now," so I was warmly welcomed and ended up stepping inside Jessica's family home. Feeling unwell, Jessica decided to rest upstairs, and I was invited into their huge living room. That was where I was introduced to everyone. And boy, that introduction was just something else. Living in Jessica's family home was her father, named Tyler, her mother Chelsea, Jessica's twin younger brothers, a younger sister named Mason, grandparents, and even a great-grandmother. Adding to that, because Jessica had returned home after a long time, her older brother, Kevin, and his wife Lena, their 3 kids, and a close family friend, who seemed to be the boyfriend of another sister, had also came over for dinner. So, on this day, there was a total of 14 people at Jessica's house. Growing up as an only child, I was used to a quiet and calm household. Well, this was also because both my parents and I were not very talkative. And thus, the atmosphere at Jessica's house was so overwhelming for me. Not only was there a big family, but each one talked nonstop, like a machine gun firing away. Moreover, everyone would just start talking, regardless of whether someone else was already speaking. I felt like I had to be some kind of superhuman to keep up with them all. For my part, I was desperately trying to explain, "I'm not her boyfriend. I'm just a coworker. You don't have to be shy about it." "How long have you two been dating?" was the kind of thing they kept asking, not listening to a word I said. I felt hopeless. However, they weren't bad people. Proof of that was the endless stream of food and drinks they brought out. By that time, I had completely missed my chance to return to my hotel. Then, Jessica, who had been resting upstairs, came down to the first floor. Whether the medicine had worked or resting helped, Jessica's complexion had improved. Seeing me being bombarded with questions, Jessica sighed deeply. "Oh, Jake, I'm so sorry," she said. Jessica then explained to her family that I was just a co-worker, and I had given her a ride home because she felt ill. Jessica's family seemed disappointed to find out I wasn't her boyfriend, but they quickly adjusted. "Whether you're a co-worker or not, you're still our guest. Is there anything you don't like to eat? You're staying over, right?" "Well, I was thinking of staying at a hotel, and there's no worry for my dinner. I can grab something at a convenience store or something," I replied. But the adults insisted on having a drink and chat, and the kids kept asking me to stay, saying, "You have to stay over." Feeling pressured, I finally called the hotel to cancel my reservation. Jessica leaned over and whispered apologetically in my ear, "I'm really sorry. Are you okay with this?" Even though Jessica said that, the truth was, I was starting to enjoy this place. While having some drinks and food, I'd really warmed up to everyone. I'm not great at talking with women, but the men in this house were quite chatty and made it fun to converse. And while I might be a bit shy, I've always loved lively atmospheres. Being an only child, I've always dreamed of big families. Everyone here is pretty assertive, but they're also hilarious, and Jessica's mom makes some delicious food. Plus, Jessica's twin brothers, Brandon and Kyle, are 26, close to my age, so we got along. No, it's my first time in such a lively setting, but I'm starting to have fun. I'm the one who should apologize, staying over at my boss's family home like this. No, I'm glad you're here. My family's a bit loud, but if you're enjoying yourself, then it's worth it. I couldn't help but think that perhaps Jessica's considerate personality came from this family background. As the night went on and more drinks were poured, Brandon and Kyle brought out an old photo album of Jessica's childhood. Looking through it, I wondered how unexpected this whole situation was. Going on a business trip with my attractive boss to her hometown and ending up coming close with her family. Even though it was an unexpected event, seeing how pleased Jessica seemed with me bonding with her family made me glad that I came here. Lost in these thoughts, Tyler, who had been in the bathroom, returned. "How far have you guys gotten?" To which Brandon responded, "We just talked about when Jessica finished elementary school." A tipsy Tyler, along with Brandon and Kyle, have been telling me various stories from Jessica's childhood. "Oh right. Mind if I continue? You're not bored, are you?" To be honest, I suspected the stories from the older guys were a bit exaggerated, but they were darn entertaining. "I'm all ears." I was eager to hear more. "Stop talking about embarrassing stuff, okay?" Jessica blushed. A side of her I'd never seen at the office, and it was something new. Even then, the family revolved around the stories about Jessica, and eventually, Tyler, perhaps was too tipsy, dozed off. I noticed others, including the children, had gone to bed. In the kitchen, I could see Jessica and the eldest son's wife was starting to clean up. Catching a glimpse of Jessica in an apron, an image I'd never be able to see in the office, I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. But as Brandon observed me, he whispered to me with a smirk on his face, "You have a crush for my sister, don't you? It's so obvious." "What? No, I mean..." While I blushed in panic, Kyle also chimed in, whispering, "Just spill the beans. Maybe Jessica feels, maybe I shouldn't give it away." After they teased me enough, the two brothers headed to their rooms upstairs. I was left alone in the living room, pondering over Brandon and Kyle's words. I had chosen not to confess my feelings, but what if Jessica felt the same way about me? I tried to keep calm, but memories of the photographs and Jessica's life journey filled my mind. Jessica has always been deeply loved by her family. I thought, if I could be loved by someone like her, I'd be truly blessed. Encouraged by Brandon and Kyle's hints, I began to feel some courage. I felt that if I missed this moment, I might never find the nerve again. So, once the cleaning was done and Jessica returned from the kitchen, I mustered the courage and confessed my feelings. "I've liked you for a long time now. I always felt you were out of my league. I thought I should just give up, but I couldn't. I want to become someone special for you." Jessica was clearly surprised by my sudden confession, and her cheeks soon turned red. "Do you remember asking me why I was always caring about you? When I first saw you, I thought you were like my father, big in stature, but kind-hearted inside. However, during a business gathering, I overheard you talking about how your size was an insecurity for you. That's when I felt the urge to cheer you up. Indeed, I always felt self-conscious about my large frame and timid personality. I thought you shouldn't feel that way. You always step up for the physical works at the office, right? And you offer to help out with chores, always with a smile. Initially, I just wished you'd have more confidence, but before I knew it, I found myself caring about you more and more." I had no idea she had noticed all those little things about me. My heart was racing, and my palms were sweaty. But when I looked into Jessica's eyes, they were glistening and wavering. I wasn't the only one who was nervous. She took a deep breath and said, "It was me who has liked you from the beginning. If you're okay with it, would you date me?" Holding back my urge to jump in joy, I took her hand and replied, "Yes, yes. Thank you so much," bowing my head. But remembering how sweaty my hands were, I tried to pull away, yet Jessica held on tightly, making it impossible to let go. I still remember the happiness I felt over such a small thing. The next day, after announcing our relationship to Jessica's entire family, they seemed ready to throw a party, despite it being early morning. We managed to avoid that, but I was overjoyed by how warmly her family accepted me. After saying our goodbyes to Jessica's family, we took the same Amtrak train home. Sitting next to each other, We sneakily held hands. It felt like I was a teenager again, and also a bit embarrassing. Just holding hands made my heart race like crazy. She's truly a beautiful person, and a year into our relationship, we got married. Our wedding was lively with Jessica's family in full attendance. During the ceremony, I found myself reminiscing. Me, with my big, bear-like physique, and my stunning boss, Jessica. Despite our differences, we became closer. Thinking back to the business trip to her hometown, everything happened so fast. As I recalled this, a performance started by Jessica's siblings, making everyone laugh till they nearly rolled over. At the same time, realizing I was becoming a part of this wonderful family lifted my spirits. Whether it was happiness or amusement, or both, tears streamed down my face. "You're crying already," said Jessica, wiping away my tears, dressed in a beautiful white wedding gown. Jessica's beauty was so blinding that it only made me tear up more. Seeing this, even Jessica's brothers and father couldn't help but tear up themselves. "Jessica, I'm sorry for crying so much. I'm just so happy and grateful. Thank you for making me a part of such an amazing family. I know I'm emotional, but I promise I'll be a strong man. Just let me cry for today." As I sniffled, Jessica gently wiped my eyes with a handkerchief and said, "It's okay for you to be a crybaby. I'll always be here to wipe away your tears." She accepts me for who I am. I might have married an angel. That's genuinely how I felt, and it was the best day of my life. It's hard to believe that such things still happens these days. I thought vaguely about it in the narrow hallway of my apartment. There was a thick envelope on the small show box. Inside it was payoff money. I had a girlfriend. Her name was Michelle. She was the only daughter of the chairman of the Johnson General Hospital, one of the largest hospitals in town. Last night, I proposed to Michelle. And this is the result. Suddenly, Michelle's father showed up at my apartment and looked at me as if I were trash and said, "I won't let my daughter marry an uneducated loser." And then, saying it's payoff money, he left a thick envelope on the table. Michelle seems to have had her cell phone taken away by her father, so I can't get in touch with her. Just like that, my relationship with Michelle abruptly ended. My name is Rick, and I turned 32 this year. Currently, I'm the vice president of a gaming company I started with a friend. There were a lot of ups and downs to get here, but I believe everything has been a learning experience for me. Deep in my heart, there are things that I've yet to fully come to terms with. My father passed away when I was young, and my mother raised me on her own. Ever since middle school, I wanted to start working early. Being the eldest son, I have 3 younger sisters. When I told my mom that I have decided to quit high school and work while attending night school, she looked at me in guilt and bowed deeply to me. It wasn't that I loved studying, but telling her about the night school was more of an excuse to make her understand. I remember feeling humbled when she bowed so deeply. Together, my mom and I supported our family, ensuring my sisters could follow their desired paths. That gave me a lot of confidence. In the end, I kept working at a florist that I'd been part of since my part-time days. That's when I first met Michelle. I think I was 25 and she was 22. Every Monday and Thursday afternoon, she would come into the shop to buy fresh flowers. She never bought large bouquets. Just a few stems, and then she'd leave. We'd exchange a few words every time. Little by little, I found myself drawn to her shy and modest character. Michelle is the kind of girl you don't often see these days, with a quiet, reserved, and pure demeanor. Even someone as thick-skinned as me could immediately tell from the way she carried herself that she came from a good upbringing. On Valentine's Day, when she gave me chocolates, I realized for the first time that she had feelings for me. I asked her out right then and there. Our relationship was smooth sailing, never had an argument. Life was hectic for me. Being invited to co-found a business by a friend might have been a contributing factor. The only time Michelle and I could really meet was on Sundays. With my sisters still in school and tuition fees to pay, I didn't have a lot of money for myself. Our dates were mostly in the park. Every time, Michelle would bring along homemade lunch, and we'd idly spend our time in the park. I loved that. After dating for a year, I mustered up the courage to propose to her. I felt that if Michelle stays by my side for the rest of my life, I could push myself many times harder. I couldn't afford a ring worth 3 months of my salary and got her a cheaper one, but Michelle cried tears of joy after she saw it. She kept repeating, "Thank you." I swore I'd make her happy, but by the next morning, I felt like I'd been thrown into hell. The last time I saw Michelle, she had a tear-streaked face from crying with happiness. Our time together ended right there. Starting today, we have a few new recruits coming in. I was approached by HR as soon as I arrived at the office. The company had grown unimaginably since its inception, with almost 30 employees. After my heartbreak, I got seriously involved in a startup with a friend. He founded a gaming company. I've always loved games, and after seeing a game I created, he approached me to co-found the company. I dedicated myself to this job. The company grew rapidly in no time. Now, we're focusing on nurturing esports talents. My current job involves scouting esports players. It's quite a fulfilling job. Many young folks aspire to be professional esports players, but taking that first step can be challenging. I believe it's because its recognition in society is still somewhat limited. When job prospects come up, I bet very few parents would understand if their child says, "I want to be a pro gamer." Many kids are already making money by streaming games, but few share that with their parents. Streamers who make a living off game streaming need to put in the effort to make others understand their line of work. I support those kids who feel stuck because those around them don't understand what they're passionate about. I believe my job is to back their dreams. The recruits coming in today are between 18 and 26 years old. We plan to hire them as professionals. Among them, there's one guy I see as a key player. His name is Keith. He's a player who excels in multiplayer online battle arenas, MOBA. Simply put, MOBA is a game style where you team up and cooperate with allies to attack and conquer the enemy's base. It requires both strategy and the ability to make split-second decisions. I felt Keith had an exceptional talent. I'm Keith Johnson. It is a pleasure to meet you all. He's tall and good-looking. Although he seemed a bit rough around the edges, the way he responded and carried himself showed he came from a good upbringing, a good young man. The women in the office were clearly impressed by him. After a brief greeting, Keith started handling insurance paperwork and other administrative tasks in the HR department. It's a busy day since there are other new hires, and each needs to be directed to their respective departments. That's when I overheard a surprised voice from one of the female clerks. My feet stopped dead in their tracks when the clerk says, "He's the son of the Johnson General Hospital chairman, you know." Johnson General Hospital is the home of a girl I can't forget, Michelle. I remember Michelle mentioning that she's an only daughter with one younger brother who doesn't have the inclination or aptitude for medical studies. Now I understand why Michelle's dad told me. Her future husband has to be a doctor. It might be pointless to think about it now, but if Keith had gone to mid-school and become a doctor, maybe Michelle and I could have gotten married. I was called an uneducated trash. The opposition to our marriage wasn't just because of inheritance issues. I admit that I had my own shortcomings. Yet, I couldn't help but wonder, What if Keith had become a doctor? A fact I never realized when I first scouted Keith. Would I have recruited him if I'd known he was Michelle's brother? Mixing personal feelings with business is downright unacceptable. I kept reminding myself of that. Otherwise, I couldn't imagine supporting Keith's dream. Keith, as I thought, immediately became a vital member of our team. At the welcome party, he introduced himself, saying he was the son of a hospital chairman but couldn't give up his dream, so he left. Everyone gave him a warm applause for his determination. I clapped along, but something still felt off deep down. "You don't go home. You live alone, right?" I casually inquired about his personal life during the party. "I've cut ties with my family. When I said I didn't want to become a doctor, they disowned me. I think my sister will have to marry someone taking over the hospital." Keith mumbled. "I do feel a bit guilty about my sister." Watching him, I felt a burning anger rise within me. "Must be tough for your sister, all because you decided to be selfish. She's taking all the heat because of you, isn't she?" Even I thought it was a mean thing to say. At that moment, I couldn't control my emotions. I harshly lashed out at a man almost a decade younger than me. Keith flinched slightly but firmly said, "I don't regret it. I know my dream might have come at someone else's expense, but I can't give up." The thought of giving up never even crossed my mind. That's the determination I bring here. Keith spoke of his determination. I wished I could blame him for distorting the future Michelle and I could have had. Such pettiness made me ashamed of myself. Still, the unresolved feelings continued to smolder within me. In esports, maintaining concentration amidst high tension is crucial. Especially in the game Keith plays, this is essential. It's the same even in regular practice matches. There's constant competition within the team. No different from any other sport. Only the best among the team get to play in matches. Those who can't produce results get phased out. That's the world of professionals. Many push themselves too hard and get sick. It's our job to guide them so that doesn't happen. Keith has a touch of genius, but he never forgets to work hard. I deeply wanted to support him, but I felt ashamed of my inability to do so. Then the incident happened. It was Keith's official debut match. A big tournament with a large number of participating teams. It was a knockout format. Keith's team kept on winning. With the lights dimmed in the venue, a large monitor lit up. Players sat in front of computers, engrossed in their game. Surrounded by a large audience, they had to keep their composure during the match. If they let the pressure get to them, they'd lose. Holding my breath, I closely watched Keith's character across the screen. Then, it seemed like Keith, seated in his chair, tilted his head slightly. The next moment, with a crashing sound, Keith fell from his chair to the ground. On the screen, the character controlled by Keith stood still as the opposing team attacked. "Are you okay, Keith?" I rushed over to find Keith gasping for breath on the floor. An ambulance was immediately called. When it arrived, I ended up riding with him. The paramedic told me, "We're heading to the Johnson General Hospital's emergency room," and I was a bit surprised. It seems there's a mysterious connection between the Johnsons and me. I tried to avoid it, but it felt like I was drawing this fate closer. I felt uneasy. When he was brought into the emergency room, I waited outside the treatment room. Suddenly, I heard the sound of hurried footsteps approaching down the hallway. I didn't want to assume, but I couldn't help but feel tense. My suspicions were confirmed. It was Michelle, now grown into a mature woman. She walked toward me with a pale face. She must have been taught not to run in the hospital corridors since she was a child. A frustrated frown creased her forehead. "You're from Keith's company, right? Where's Keith? How's Keith doing?" she said, looking at the treatment room's door, completely unaware of my presence. She was looking at the door and didn't notice me at all. She was clearly worried about her younger brother and seemed too preoccupied to notice anything else. I felt bad for Keith, but my heart raced more for Michelle. "He just went into treatment room," I managed to answer, and Michelle's slender shoulders shuddered. Then, with great force, she turned to me. Her wide eyes looked as if they could overflow with tears, staring deep into mine. "Is it, Rick?" Her voice trembled as she asked. I nodded confidently in response. "It's been a while. Who would have thought we'd meet like this?" Michelle looked like she was about to burst into tears any moment. I was frozen, not knowing what to do. The tension between us was broken by the nurse's invitation. "Please come in." Normally, only family would be allowed in. "Can I come in too? I'm really worried." When I asked Michelle, she gave a small nod in agreement. Keith was lying in bed with an IV drip. He looked much better, which was a bit relieving. "Doctor, how's he doing? Is he going to be okay?" Michelle, clutching the hem of my jacket, looked up with concern. I spoke up on her behalf, addressing the doctor. The doctor said, "He's overworked, probably pushed himself too hard. Lack of sleep, not eating right, gaming all night, I suppose." The decision was to keep him overnight for observation. We both felt relieved that it wasn't more serious. The patient himself, Keith, was soundly asleep. "I'll go grab some things he'll need for the overnight stay." Thinking Michelle should stay by Keith's side, I made the offer. "Could you? Thank you so much." To reassure Michelle, I grinned and said, "Leave it to me." Seeing that, Michelle's face softened a little. That's when it happened. Suddenly, the treatment room door was flung open. The loud bang startled everyone inside, including the nurses. Keith, always causing trouble, entering with a loud shout, was Dr. Johnson in a white coat. He was Michelle and Keith's father. He was, without a doubt, my archenemy. And overworking, after all that talk and leaving the house like that, should have listened to me and become a doctor. He grabbed Keith's collar and started shaking him. The nurses rushed to intervene. This isn't how a doctor should behave towards a patient. A nurse trying to intervene got shoved to the ground. Dr. Johnson raising his hand to strike Keith and shouted, "Wake up!" Without thinking, I grabbed his arm. "Stay out of it. This is a family matter." The annoyed doctor started yelling at me. I had no intention of letting go. "With all due respect, that doesn't look like a family matter to me. Keith is one of our best. I'd appreciate if you refrain from violence." Hearing that, Dr. Johnson looked at me. Immediately, his eyes widened and his mouth twisted in shock. It seemed that he finally recognized who I was. "You dared to deceive my daughter, and now my precious son too, you uneducated piece of trash." The doctor's words ignited memories of my past anger. But I'm not the same person I was back then. I won't be shaken by such remarks. As the doctor and I locked eyes, Keith woke up. "Wait, Dad, sis too. Wasn't I in the middle of a game?" Struggling to grasp the situation, Keith's confusion was evident. I gently embraced him, explaining that he had collapsed and was brought to the hospital. "Keith, get back home now. I can still get you into a decent medical school. You wouldn't go wrong if you just listened to me." The doctor's harsh rebuke made Keith bite his lip. Always being dictated and controlled like this. That's probably why he ran away, I thought. Keith's an adult now. He makes his own decisions. Your children have grown beyond your reach. I positioned myself between Keith and the doctor, shielding both Michelle and Keith. The doctor, face filled with anger, grabbed at my collar. You seem rather bold now. You can't hide that you quickly bailed out on my daughter with that payoff money." Michelle gasped and said, "What?" from behind me. "That money was returned to you ages ago," I replied with a provocative smirk. The doctor shouted, "You're lying. Dad, aren't you familiar with Rick's company? They've been generously donating every year." Keith's voice reflected his growing impatience. What are you talking about? Donations? Every year? You can't be serious." I brushed off the doctor's hand, presenting my business card once again. Recognizing the company name, the doctor's confidence wavered. "I donated that money immediately. Why would I keep it? I always intended to come back for Michelle one day." I spilled out the promise I'd held deep in my heart. The promise that always suppressing my feelings, deceiving even myself. But I can't do that anymore. My life has always been intertwined with Michelle's. Today, our unexpected reunion made those feelings come flooding back. I've been making donations to Johnson General Hospital under my company name. Initially, it was just to repay that payoff money. The continuous donations were because I couldn't let go of my connection with Michelle. Maybe I was testing my own resolve. For a private clinic, donations are a lifeline. Staring intently at my card, the doctor suddenly changed his demeanor. "If only you'd said so. My apologies for the misunderstanding. We're always grateful for your support. Please keep it coming." His demeanor had shifted completely. He seemed nonchalant but was oddly ingratiating. He's probably afraid I'd get upset and stop the donations. "Well, I'll leave the rest to you." With that, he made a hasty exit, leaving us all dumbfounded. The rest of us were just left in shock. Both the attending physician and the nurses had surprised looks on their faces due to the sudden change in the doctor's behavior. "Well then, Keith, you will be admitted for the night. Remember, managing one's health is part of a professional's job. Be more cautious from now on." "I'm sorry. I will be more careful. Rick, thank you so much for standing up to my father so firmly. I was truly moved." "Thank you," Keith exclaimed with joy. I felt somewhat embarrassed. Receiving praise head-on is something I never really got used to. Michelle chuckled as she watched my reaction. "Listen, Michelle, it's super late, and you might be fed up waiting, but if you're still single," I mustered up the courage to tell her that. Before I could finish, Michelle interrupted. "I am single. I haven't gotten married. I couldn't forget about you after you suddenly disappeared." The earnest look in her eyes left me speechless. After I had vanished, Michelle had confronted my father. She heard what had transpired, what my father had done, and felt devastated. But she laughed, saying she never thought she wouldn't see me again. I always felt that our paths would cross again. I knew it in my heart. Michelle said she had been looking forward to that day. Tears threatened to spill from my eyes. Thinking about her holding onto that tiny glimmer of hope every day after our separation made my heart ache. "I'll bring a much nicer ring next time." As I said this, scratching my head, Michelle shook hers. "I like that ring. You still have it, right?" Feeling like she saw right through me, I scratched my head and responded, "You got me." "Of course, I still have it. The ring that was returned to me as if to sever our ties. I want that ring on my finger again." I nodded firmly in response to Michelle's words. At that moment, the entire treatment room erupted into applause. The doctor, nurses, and Keith all clapped their hands, saying, "Good for you," as a gesture of celebration. Suddenly, I snapped back to reality. Right, Michelle and I weren't alone. Feeling embarrassed, I hastily left the treatment room. A few days later, Michelle and I both went to meet the doctor. At first, the doctor refused to see us, but Michelle's tears eventually won him over. "All right, I'll approve the marriage, but on one condition." The head doctor's condition was to forget about the old words he said, which was amusing. It's probably about that comment he made about me being an uneducated trash. I quickly replied, "Of course." I wanted to register our marriage right away, but due to work, it kept getting postponed. The one who ran out of patience was Michelle, and unusually, she puffed up her cheeks, raising her voice in protest at me. She hardly ever gets angry. She hesitated a bit and then complained in a soft voice, "Please, don't keep me waiting any longer." Seeing Michelle, blushing and speaking shyly, I realized how long I'd kept her waiting. I'll do it right away." I stood up and left my work. I grabbed her hand and rushed to the county clerk's evening counter. Michelle said, "Wait," but I had no intention of waiting any longer. Our pace quickened, and by the time the county building was in sight, we were both running. Hold our hands tightly. I swore in my heart I would never let go of this hand for the rest of my life.